You're listening to the Heart and Soul podcast with Kathryn Benko. I'm on a mission to celebrate breakthrough, empowerment, and shameless living in the lives of women everywhere. Join me and let's live unashamed together. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Heart and Soul. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Rebecca George, who is the founder of Radical Radiance, which is a podcast community where listeners are equipped to blend what they love with the Jesus who makes them shine, which I love that, by the way. I love that little description of your podcast. It's so good. But not only that, she's also a speaker and the author of a new book called You're Not Too Late, which I feel like we can all relate to, especially as women feeling like we're behind. So Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, Kathryn, I'm so excited to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be great. You're a podcaster. We were just talking about how she has a really legit mic. And so it's going to sound hopefully good.
I hope so.
Because I edit these and I don't know how to edit. So sometimes my episodes sound great and sometimes they sound horrible. So we shall see. I'm optimistic about this one though.
Yes.
So why don't you start by telling my listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I would love to. Well, I'll tell you a few of the hats I wear. You shared a good bit of that a moment ago, but I am a pastor's wife. My husband is the lead pastor of our local church here in East Tennessee. If you can't tell by my accent, you will pretty quickly. Local church ministry is a huge part of our life. And then, as you said, I have put out a couple of books. My second one just came out a couple months ago called You're Not Too Late, Trusting God's Timing in a Hurry Up World. So I'm talking a lot about that right now. That's taken up a lot of my time. And I, as you said, am a podcaster. So I host the show Radical Radiance. It's been going for about 5.5 years, where we have weekly conversations that just point us back to what it looks like to radiate the heart of Jesus in all that we do in our life, our work, our marriages, our friendships, all of those things. And I speak out on the road a lot. So I would say, by and large, I love writing books, creating resources, having conversations that just point us back to what it looks like to radiate Jesus in all that we do. So that's 30,000 foot view of what Rebecca's up to.
I love it. We're going to get into the weeds of it. Why don't, let's see, I have so many questions, but my first question is, were you raised in the church? Was being a pastor's wife something that you it's not like you know who you're going to marry, but was it
yeah, totally
naturally where you were raised in the church and you kind of knew how to take on that role? Or was it we're pastoring a church?
I think, that's a really interesting question, Kathryn, because I think it's a little bit of both and. I did grow up in the church. I got saved when I was 10 years old and have been walking with Jesus for 25 years almost, which I'm so grateful that was my story and that I came to Christ at a very young age. That said, I grew up in a little bit of a legalistic, I would say, church environment. And what I would say was modeled, maybe for me, maybe that's the best way to say it, as a pastor's wife, was very introverted, very quiet, amazing women who had 3 or 4 children very young, worked out of the home, either didn't really have a large ministry role in their husband's ministry and they were momming it out, or they played the piano, right? Very traditional role was what I saw modeled. And not only do I not play the piano, but I also don't have that kind of personality. I've always been very career driven. My husband and I do not have kids yet. We do desire that for our family, but I just felt like nothing about me fit the mold of what I knew to be a pastor's wife. So it was really interesting, actually, when I started dating my husband, he was a single lead pastor, which is actually pretty rare.
Yeah.
And he was pastoring a church. We met many years earlier when we were serving in the same church together. But when we started dating, he was the lead pastor of a church in South Mississippi. And that was a huge part of our conversations as we were figuring out what our life would look like once we got married, because we were not the couple that met in college at Young Life and fell in love and got married at 22 and had their first baby at 24. And he was the youth guy that became the exec pastor that became the lead pastor. I married a lead pastor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was a little bit of the jumping in the deep end of what ministry was going to be like and how do we work as a team. And I would honestly, Kathryn, still say we're figuring that out. And I think
Oh, yeah.
that's a huge part of marriage, like, whether you're married to a pastor or not, or your life looks totally different than mine, w figuring out, like, what do you bring to the table? What do I bring to the table? And how does God wanna use that as a team as we serve him together? And we actually just had a conversation yesterday afternoon about that. And, so yeah, I would say it is not something I grew up thinking like, "Man, I'd really love to marry a pastor one day." If anything, it was the opposite.
Yeah.
And I say that just, like, really transparently. And, it's one of those both and things of life, right? Like, it is one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I love getting to walk alongside my husband and get to have a front row seat and watching him live out his calling.
Yeah.
And I hear every sermon he preaches before anybody else does. I get to sit in his office and I've seen him lead people to Christ. Like, what joy. And there's a lot of heartbreak that comes with it. There's a lot of challenges that come with it. And
Yeah.
so it's very both and. That's probably more than you wanted, but that's what I
No,
would
I
say.
I love detail. Let's get into it. I love it. I think that, growing up, I had this like picture of like maybe just as a young like middle school, high schooler, I had this picture of women who love Jesus were kind of like all meek, all
Yes.
very submissive. And like there's
Mhm.
like nothing wrong with those traits at
Yeah.
all, but I'm psychotic. Like I'm so loud. I've always been like really driven and just kind of like out there.
Yeah.
And so I also didn't get married. I mean, in the South, like getting married late, which I was late, was
Yeah.
29.
Okay.
And I didn't get
Yeah,
married
I
till
was
later.
28. So,
Yeah.
yeah, similar
But
age.
didn't that feel like so old, like,
So
growing
old.
up? Because,
Oh, I was
like
like 100. Yeah.
because especially growing up in the church, it feels as if, like you said, like, you meet your person in high school or in
Yeah.
college, and then you graduate, and then you get married.
Yeah.
And so, that was a lot of my friends' stories was, like, they found their person young and got married young, and I was like, "Where's my person?" And I had this, like, insecurity for a very long time of, like, maybe I'm just not the type of Christian woman that men wanna marry because I'm loud and because I'm, like,
Yeah.
a little more just I don't know what the word I would use to describe it. Out like, I don't know,
Yeah.
bold, like, I
Yeah.
don't know the right words to use right now, but just not what you would think. Anyways, and then I ended up marrying someone who is the meek one. You know what I mean? And we balance each
Totally.
other out really well. Like, he's, like, a very much of, like, a silent thinker, and, like, he, like, really thinks before he speaks, and I'm, like, the opposite, but it's a good balance.
Yeah.
All that to say, kind of correlating with your book is if you're a woman listening to this and you kind of feel like I'm still single because, and you've put this label or reason on why, like your person is going to like be the best like yin to your yang,
100%. Yeah.
and the gifts and the personality that God has given you are like on purpose, like
Yeah.
they're not you don't need to hold
Yeah.
back who you are just because you feel like you don't like compare to some other woman in the church or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
yeah. So, you become a pastor's wife. You moved to Tennessee, or you're from like where?
Yeah, so our story's interesting. I was in Knoxville when I met my husband,
Okay.
or really reconnected with my husband, started dating him. And so when we got married, I moved from Tennessee to South Mississippi, where we were there serving together for about 3.5 years through COVID,
Mhm.
actually. And summer of 2023, God actually moved us back to East Tennessee. And so we would both consider this area home
Yeah.
and really felt led to come back here, which I'm so grateful that God opened the door for that. Um, so yeah, we have went through a lot of change together in our first 6 years of marriage, couple moves for me, one move for him, and a ton of change in our church in Mississippi there, and then leaving and coming here. And so I would say change has been a major through line kind of our first few years of marriage, which is something that I think grows you a lot closer together
Yeah.
and is incredibly hard, you know?
Yeah. Super
Yeah.
sanctifying. You're like, oh, I didn't want to have to go through this to learn this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes you have
Totally.
to.
Totally.
Okay, so your book, You're Not Too Late, was immediately drawn when like we connected via email to the title of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I feel it's something that, like I just discussed, like I always felt, I was too late to the game when it comes to like this constructed timeline that I had created. So would you kind of go into detail about what you hope, or the message you hope that people get out of reading your book?
Yeah, totally. Well, I'll back up a little bit and give you kind of the why, because always think that's interesting. So my first book was all about what are your gifts and talents and how are you using them to the glory of God. It was called Do the Thing, Gospel Centered Goals, Gumption, and Grace for the Go Getter Girl. So it was a very fun book to write and it was a very fun book to talk about. I was in a 2-book contract with my publisher. So I got on the other side of that first launch and started kind of dreaming with the Lord about what was next. And honestly, Kathryn, at the beginning, I thought it might be a book on singleness because, like you, I got married in Southern culture tradition later in life than most of my peers. And I felt like I had a lot to say to single women. I'd been a bridesmaid 12 times when I married Dustin and had just done a lot of the like show up for your people when they're getting the thing you want.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had a lot to say about that. And so the more I prayed through it and just talked to other women in my life, the more I began to recognize, like, oh, this thread of longing and waiting is so much bigger than just singleness.
Yeah.
Because I married Dustin, and the reality of that is like my longing for singleness was fulfilled. And I'm so grateful that I get to walk alongside him and have a ministry partner and all of that. So, like, all of that dream came true. That longing was fulfilled. But now, longing in my heart just looks different than it
Yeah.
did 6 years ago. Right. So, whether it's kind of the relational piece of that, you're desiring to get married or have children or restore a broken relationship, or it's more vocational, like I feel led to make a career pivot or go start a business or get involved in a ministry. The challenges that accompany those longings are actually pretty similar. They look the same many times.
Yeah.
It's things like despair and like, will this ever happen for me? It's doubt, like, will God ever provide that for me? It's comparison and envy. That's, I think, a massive one for women right now. Resentment. Like, I've waited so long, and watching other people get to experience that has caused kind of the bitterness to grow in my heart. And now it's turned into resentment. And so, what I became passionate about is having a different kind of conversation about our longing. Like, how do we live in the midst of brokenness and have real emotions about the things that we desire that many times are God given, like the desire for kids, the desire for marriage? And how do we be human in that? And we're going to experience fear, we're going to experience insecurity, but where do we turn when we do? And
Mhm.
so, my hope is that readers walk away not necessarily like, oh, I've kicked fear to the curb forevermore and I'm never going to struggle with that again, because we're human and we will.
Yeah.
But when we do, where do I turn? Like, is my heart so hidden in the word that like I can quickly recognize that and pivot back to truth when I am struggling in that way? So, all of our challenges, I think, in the middle of longing look maybe a little different, but I think a lot of the challenges are the same. And so, no matter what kind of longing that you're experiencing, my hope is that you find some encouragement there.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like, no matter what it is you're longing for, whether it be a partner or a child or a career change, the feelings are all kind of similar. The
Yeah.
doubt, the trying to remain hopeful, but the comparison, like all of that is like so real and so relatable, whether you're waiting for something that someone else isn't waiting for or vice versa. Like, you can all relate on the feelings that come with it. Is there something in your life? I mean, I know you said you wanted to originally write on singleness, which kind of led to this, but is there something currently in your life right now as you were writing this that kind of gave you the, I guess, inspiration to encourage others? Like, is there something that you're
Mm.
currently waiting for that kind of pushed you to write this book?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the most obvious one is having kids,
Yeah.
right? I'm in my 30s. And so I'm very much in that season where all my friends are having babies, which is so sweet and awesome. And um, just super transparently, the first few years of our marriage were really hard, if
Yeah.
I'm honest. Like, we got married 10 months before COVID started. And so the first year of our marriage was not only me leaving everything I'd ever known in Tennessee to move almost 600 miles away from my friends and family, um, to become a pastor's wife, which there's joy in that and awesome things that come along with that. And there were great challenges. The culture we were ministering in was really challenging. It was a very small town, so I felt like I was in a fishbowl all the time. And then we were hit with a pandemic. And so the first few years of our marriage were actually pretty jarring. And I cannot fathom adding another human into the mix in the middle of that. So I feel like now, not to overshare, but like on the other side of COVID, we're kind of in this like, who are we? Who do we want to be when we grow up? Kind of like, let's have the fun we did not, frankly, get to have in the first few years, and kind of sit with that desire. We definitely want children, but we have not. We've wanted to have like the right foundation in our marriage, in all fairness, before we like bring that into the picture.
Yeah.
And so I would say in very real time, as I was processing through um, all of these different chapters and topics that I mentioned a minute ago, I'm wrestling through it in my own life. Like I kind of wrote about it in retrospective. Like a lot of the stories you'll read will be either somebody I walked alongside in a challenge like that, or my own season of singleness and career challenges and things like that. And yeah, there's definitely that huge piece of longing. I'm a big fan of that term, like you write from your scars, not your wounds, right?
Mm.
So you will not hear me talk a lot about that current challenge of longing, because I don't know that I could write about it in a way that would probably be the version of it I would like the world would need to know right now, right?
Right.
Because me and the Lord are processing through that. But that was definitely the one that was heaviest on my heart as I was
Yeah.
writing the book, for sure.
I've never heard that quote before. You write from your scars, not your wounds. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel as if what people need to know is if you feel like everyone in your life, especially via social media, has everything you've ever wanted and you're waiting, they don't. Like
Yeah.
everyone this side of heaven is longing for something because we're not
Totally.
whole. And so, like you said, like it went from longing for a husband to now longing for a child. Like the longing just shifts into a different category, but it's always like we're never quite fully fulfilled here because this isn't our home. And
Yeah.
so we're always going to be longing for something. And so if you're like scrolling through social media and feel as if you don't have what this person has and they have everything you've ever wanted, there's something that they're longing for as well. It's just typically not shared on social media.
100%.
So just
Yeah.
hear that if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm the one in the waiting and everyone else has what I want. Everyone's longing for something. It just shifts, like you said, to something
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
categories.
Yeah. So good.
If you actually, no, let me go back. Let's say someone's listening here and they are longing for something and this really resonates with them. What are some pieces in scripture that you would point them to give them a little more faith and hope in what's to come?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll give you a really practical one, because I think so many times when we're longing for something and that season is pretty prolonged, what we tend to do, especially if you're listening and you grew up in the South, or maybe you live in the South, and you notice about our culture, like we're good, we're fine, but we're busy, but we're good, and we just
Mhm.
kind of don't really confront a lot of like conflict and whatever. What we tend to do is apply that same principle to our relationship with God, right? I'm maybe unwilling to just really raw go before the Lord and say, like, this is where my heart is. Like, would you meet me in the middle of that? And I've actually been so encouraged by reading the Psalms in the middle of my own longing, because you'll find so many examples of David and other psalmists just crying out to the Lord in the middle of their despair, and they're wondering how it will work out. And they're saying, like, how long, oh Lord, will, until you show up and like make a difference here or whatever. And so I think that has been such an encouragement to my heart. But a really practical thing that I talk about in the book that has helped me so much is buried right into Psalm 139. So verses 23 and 24, many of us are probably familiar with this passage, but the psalmist says, "Search my heart, O God, try me and know my anxious thoughts. And if there be a grievous way in me, lead me in the way everlasting." And I've actually come back to that prayer a lot in my own season of waiting. And we call it the Search Me God prayer in You're Not Too Late. And we come back to it at the end of every chapter to kind of just ask the Lord, like, would you search my heart? Would you examine my heart? And however I'm thinking about this, or however I'm seeing this from my limited perspective, would you reveal to me my my anxieties about it, the way that I'm thinking about it that's contradictory to your perspective? And would you point me back to truth? And so I actually go there a lot when I feel like I'm spiraling in the
Yeah.
waiting and I don't know what's next and I'm trying to trust God. Like I will just ask God to examine my heart and to point me back towards truth. And I think more than any other encouragement I could give, I would encourage you to go to the Lord about whatever you're longing for and not make it one of those things like we do a lot in our earthly relationships where we just kind of shove it under the rug. We just kind of placate ourselves with like some other thing to keep us busy. Like actually go to him and be
Yeah.
honest before him about what you're struggling with. He can handle it. He can handle it and he actually already knows what's in your heart and the condition of your heart and wants to meet you there like so badly. So if we just are willing to do that, I think that's a huge part of also protecting our hearts from bitterness
Yeah.
because that's what grows in our hearts when we're unwilling to confront what's going on. So that would be my advice.
That's so true. I also find just from my own personal story and it's all throughout scripture as well. Like I love the Psalms too because David to me is so relatable. Like he's
Yeah,
just like he is me. Like I am him. Like he's like happy one second with God and then the next he's like begging God for something and living in despair and just like but
totally.
that's so real and I love that that's like portrayed in scripture and like the cool thing about that verse search my heart and know me is he already knows our hearts better than we do. Like I don't know if you're the same way but sometimes life gets so busy and monotonous almost like you just kind of do it's almost like groundhog's day sometimes where you kind of feel like you're
Yeah.
just going through the same steps every day and sometimes like even 2 weeks ago I was at the beach with friends with all the kids and one of the moms asked me how I was doing for the first time in a long time, I go, I don't really know. Like, I have
Yeah.
not thought about it
Yeah.
because sometimes you're so busy just like getting through your tasks or taking care of other people that you don't actually know how you're doing and you don't reflect on that. So, that prayer is so important because one, God already knows, like, He's
Yeah.
already searched you and He knows you, but it reveals to you maybe how something that you're feeling that you didn't even know you were feeling. And
Mhm.
so it's like a wisdom eye opener, I guess. It's
Yeah.
a revealer.
100%.
And so that I love that verse too. And it's kind of like a hard prayer to pray because you're like, I almost like don't want to know sometimes. Like sometimes
Yeah.
like to be honest, like sometimes brushing it under the rug, like you said, is like the easy way to go. But in return, like you said, it creates that bitterness and that comparison and envy and all that. So that is a great verse. All of Psalm 139. It's just like,
Yeah.
does it get any better?
Totally. No, I
It's
love that
so
passage.
good.
Yeah.
It's so, so good. Okay. I noticed that in your book, there's like some like discussion questions and prompts for the readers.
Yeah.
How is it like interactive for them? If you could just kind of dive deeper into that.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to. I love, love, love that my publisher was willing to do this for this message because I did not feel like waiting and longing and trusting God in the middle of whatever that looks like in your life could just be a book where we just like read it, put it on our nightstand, and just like moved on. I really felt like we needed to dig in and ask God to search our hearts back to that Psalm 139 passage and so I was so grateful that they let me include sections at the end of every chapter where I give you scripture to reflect on that kind of ties back to what we talked about in the chapter. There are discussion questions, prayer prompts, and we actually also did a video series that goes with every chapter. So in the introduction of the book, there's like a little QR code that you scan, and you can actually get access to an 11 session series from me for free, which I love because
That's
if you're going through,
awesome.
yeah, if you're going through the book alone, I think sometimes when you're talking about something this weighty, you need somebody to like hold your hand and walk alongside you. So if you're going through it alone, know that you have a little jolt of encouragement from me at the beginning of every chapter. And if you're doing it in a group, like, first of all, I love discipleship. I love sitting with women and learning more about God's word. I was discipling women on my college condo living room floor long before I was writing books and speaking and podcasting and everything we do now. And I still am passionate about that. And so I love the idea of women coming together and doing this study in a
Yeah.
group. And my goal actually was not to have like 30 to 40-minute long teachings that, take up the whole hour of your small group. I really just wanted to pop in and say like, hey, here's what I want you to know. I want to encourage you as you guys get started, and it be kind of a jumping off point for discussion. So the videos are pretty short. They're like 5 to 8 minutes after each chapter. And so it's a good way to kind of open up your small group, your book club, whatever you're hosting with other women. And I think that's the book in its best form, is doing it with others. So it's formatted in a way where it can be really helpful, I think, both ways, doing it alone, if that's more your jam, or getting a group of friends together to do it together. All the resources are there.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm assuming most of your readers are women, and I work with only women, and so it's not hard to get women talking.
No, absolutely
You
not.
give us one question, and we've got a whole hour community group going on. Like, we don't
Yes,
need a ton of discussion questions. We just need something to, like, get the conversation started, and the fact that
totally.
people can digest and also like unpack things with others through this
Yeah.
book is like so huge. Because again, like, how many books have you read, like you mentioned, where you just like kind of read it and it's like you
Yeah.
check it off your list and then it goes back into your nightstand, you don't even really remember like how it impacted you. So the digging is definitely crucial
Yeah.
with reading a book. What is a really your book's out, like,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it
Okay.
came out April 1st. Mhm.
Okay, okay. Have you had any really cool, like, testimonials or feedback, from
Mm.
someone or readers? And if so, is there one you'd like to share?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Confidentially, like, the stories that people bring to you about, like, "Hey, I've been waiting 10 years to have a baby." And, like, somebody needed to write this book and walk alongside me in the pain and grief of that, and, like, thank you for writing it. Or a girl that is in our book club. I'm walking through the book in a book club this summer, and one of the ladies is in her late 30s and she's still single and just still waiting on God's best for her, and still like so boldly desires that. And getting to walk alongside her has been like such a joy. And so the thing about a book like this is not the, like, singles and doubles, like, little like, "Oh, this was encouraging," or "This was whatever." Like, these are people's deepest desires of their heart.
Mhm.
So it's such a, like, tender place to get to speak into, and that is not lost on me. Like, every story I hear is weighty, right? And I just feel so humbled and honored to get to be a part of that. Like,
Yeah.
it's, I think, a really important conversation, and so I'm just continually like, "Lord, thank you. Like, thank you for letting me be a part of these people's stories and, like, get a glimpse into how you're working in their lives, and what that looks like even when we're not getting the thing we want, and getting to speak into that, will never be lost on me. So I'm just
Yeah.
really grateful.
Yeah, that is a huge gift. And also, like, if you're listening to this and like I said earlier, you feel like you're the only one. More often than not, like, people just want someone to take the initial step of vulnerability. So
Yeah.
whether that be like asking a hard question to a friend or presenting a prayer request to a friend that maybe you haven't said out loud. Like, I have
Yeah.
found through my 36 years of life that when I share something, even though I might feel nervous prior to sharing it and a little anxious, like, it's always received with either "me too," same, like, same girl, me, I struggle with that too, which
Yeah.
is so reassuring because you feel seen, you feel like understood. Where like so much of walking through a longing alone is like the hardest part for me is like feeling misunderstood when really nobody knows. Like, you haven't allowed someone to walk through that with you, even God sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also like asking one question, like we were talking about earlier, can really allow you to dive deeper with someone that you thought you might already be
Yeah.
deep with.
Yeah.
It just creates community in such a like a real way, and it's so raw. It's so easy to just ask one question or to just share one thing. It's just the leading up to it that feels like you feel anxious and maybe a little scared or nervous, but it's so worth it because the conversations that it creates are just like incredible and life-changing
Yeah.
and life-giving for you.
Yeah. I'm so grateful.
And like, I can relate to you in the waiting for a child. Like, we had a very tough time getting pregnant, staying pregnant, and I was older
Yeah.
I'm using air quotes, like for, one, what the doctors say your biological clock is, and two, what the, society says.
Yeah.
And so, like, there are ways also for you to like protect your hearts in that
Yeah.
longing phase. Like, one thing that worked for me, and it's like, it might sound harsh, is like, I would sometimes mute people on
Oh,
Instagram
that's not harsh.
who were like getting what I wanted. And
Yeah.
it felt like,
Yeah.
what it did was it created like negative thoughts in my head instead of
Mhm.
encouraging. And like the beautiful thing about the mute button is they don't know. So like,
No.
why don't you just
No.
protect your heart a little bit if muting even if it's like a best friend, if that
Yeah.
like makes you feel a little more protective. That's part of the search me God and know my heart, is like, you need to know like what maybe triggers you to
100%.
push away from God or push towards God or push away from people or push towards people, and like create healthy boundaries around that. What are some
Yeah.
ways that you would encourage someone to create those healthy boundaries when you're
Yeah.
in the season of waiting?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the mute button. I love that you shared that. I think that's a very practical one. Sometimes it requires us to be a little more ruthless on our part than even the mute button in taking breaks from social.
Yeah.
Like, dare I say that? Because what scrolling mindlessly on our phones is doing to our brains is really destructive, first of all.
Yeah.
Like, not only just related to the thing that you're longing for, but just generally, we're addicted to our phones. Like, let's
Yeah.
just all be honest. And so, taking time away can be really helpful. Also, I think in addition to going before the Lord and just being really honest about your longing, we'll all bump up against opportunities for us to have to navigate somebody else getting the thing we want.
Yeah.
Like, a really easy example is a baby shower, right?
Yes.
So let's say you're
Yeah.
the one who's walking through infertility, or maybe you're not even married yet and you're like, "Man, I don't even have the right guy." I'm one desiring to be a wife and a mom. Like, that feels like so many hoops to jump through to get to the thing that I desire. If you're kind of spiraling there, number one, going before the Lord and saying, like, man, I've got this baby shower next weekend. I love this friend. I want to show up for her. And I recognize that the blessing that you've given in her life is not to the exclusion of how you're at work in my life. And I know that's true, but my heart does not feel that today, God. So, like, I need you to grant me the joy in you that, like, does not feel like it exists today in my heart. Would you enable me by your strength, because I can't do this on my own, to
Mhm.
show up well and to show up with joy for this friend and be able to hold both? Like, let me deal with the grief that accompanies me having to go to this baby shower with a desire in my heart. I can do some of that work before I walk in the door
Yeah.
so that my heart isn't just like slapped in the face by like the envy and comparison that I feel. And then enable me to show up with joy and celebrate her. And so
Mhm.
the more we practice that and get reps at that, I think the more comfortable we'll begin to feel with holding both, you know?
Yeah. And you might find while you're confronting God about that, is maybe the best thing for you is to not go. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
that's okay. And like, it could be like, obviously later, so she's not overthinking it, but it could be after, where you have a conversation with that friend and say like, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry I didn't come. I'm so happy for you. Like, you have this beautiful blessing, and thank God for that. But for me, I just need to kind of protect my heart in that. And so, would you pray for me as,
Yeah.
you're kind of getting the thing that I want? And please know that I'm not like desiring to like pull back from you as a friend. This
Yeah.
is just like the season I'm in. I just need to kind of like protect my heart. Those conversations go a long way too.
Yeah.
Especially just like with someone that you're very close with, that would
Totally. I
hopefully
also think
respond to you.
there can be a happy medium in that too. A lot of
Yeah.
showers are drop in right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm a huge fan of the like, hey, I have a full day, but like I just wanted to come give you a hug and drop off your gift. I'm so excited for you. And it could be a like 15-minute thing where you like show
Truly.
up and you celebrate them, but like you don't have to sit in the like everybody's writing down what they got and who it's from for 2.5 hours while she unwraps all the gifts. Like, that's a lot for your
So
heart,
real.
but you can stop by and give her a hug, you know? So I
Truly.
think sometimes we think in extremes, and sometimes the extreme version is what our hearts need, and we just need to not go. But there's also happy mediums.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
sometimes I might have the energy to like show up for 2.5 hours. Sometimes like I got a hug and I got like 5 minutes of showing up with joy, and that's all my heart can do, but I
Yeah.
do wanna show up for her, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be you're right, it doesn't have to be, like, one extreme or the other, it can
Yeah.
just definitely be a happy medium for sure. Okay, I have 4 questions that I ask every guest at the end of the episode, and
Okay.
I don't tell them on purpose.
I love it.
So, let's get into those 4 questions, and then you can give, my listeners, the best place to follow you and connect with you after this. So, first question is, what is something that you're currently obsessed with right now?
Oh,
It could be like anything from like a
yeah.
food to a TV show to a book to something.
Yeah.
Anything.
I'm obsessed with sunshine. Like, it is so pretty here in East Tennessee right now, and, like, I'm really not a huge summer girl. To be honest, it's just not my favorite season. However, I've sat and, like, done this, like, have conversations like this and get this book out in the world for the last, like, 6 months. So I am just loving vitamin D and being
Yeah, yeah.
outside, like, any chance I get. So that's the thing I'm obsessed with.
Yeah. It is so brutally hot where we are right now. And I used
Yeah.
to be the biggest summer girl. Like, especially when I was single or like had no kids, I was like, summer's the best. Like,
Yeah.
something about having these kids though, man. And they just want to be outside all day and they want to be held and I'm
Yeah.
dripping in sweat by like 8 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I know.
okay, I don't think I'm a summer person anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm a fall girl.
I love fall. Fall's my favorite for
It's the best,
sure.
for sure. Okay, next question is what's something that you're really looking forward to in the rest of this year, 2025?
Oh, yeah. We have not vacationed yet. The Georgias have not vacationed yet. And so I am really looking forward to like a full week plus of just totally unplugging. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to be pretty ruthless about like notifications on my phone, being off social. My laptop will not be with me. I need that kind of vacation. And so that's the thing. Like, when you said the question, that's what bubbled up in my heart because I think we just really need a break. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. I hope that you get a great vacation.
Thank you.
Um, Next question is what is something that you really love about yourself right now? And it
Mm,
doesn't have to be like physical. In fact, I'd prefer if it's not.
yeah,
Something about your
yeah.
character that you really love.
Mm. You know, last week, I had to have a really hard conversation, and I called a friend afterwards, and I said, "I feel like the Holy Spirit gave me the words for that, and it went really well, and, like, I moved through the conversation fine, but I'm not sure that I had the tools, like, emotionally or, like, the conflict resolution tool, like, I don't know that I would have had that same conversation 5 years ago. So, I'm grateful for how the Lord has grown me in that way. Like, I
Yeah.
grew up in a pretty conflict avoidant culture. So it actually, although I have a big, bold personality, when it comes to conflict, that's actually a really challenging area for me.
Yeah.
And it's an area where I feel like I've grown and figured out how to like gracefully take up space when it's necessary and those types of things. So that might seem like a silly one, but that's an area of growth for me that
No,
I'm
that's a great
proud
one.
of. Yeah.
That's a great one. I love that.
Yeah.
My last question is if you could leave a post-it note on my listeners like mirror or computer today with just like a little piece of encouragement, what would it say?
Ugh. I mean, this is a gimme, but the title of my book, I would
You're
say
not
you're
too
not too
late.
late. Like, you
Yeah.
are not, but like truly, I say, I make this statement in the introduction of the book. I say this book is for the hopefuls, the almost but not yets, the crushed in defeat, the stunned by a lack of progress, and the weary woman ready to hang up her jersey. And I think that's a lot of us in some regard in our life. And if we would just look up and realize like God is still at work, he is still on the throne, he is still working in your life in a way that you don't see the full vantage point of,
Mm-hmm.
and you are not too late for your life. Like, that
Yeah.
is what I would want people to hear.
I love it. I love it so much. Okay, Rebecca, what is the best place for my listeners, or where is the best place for my listeners to connect with you?
Totally. I'm the most active over on Instagram. My handle is Rebecca George Author. I'm a CCA Rebecca, so that's easy to remember. And you can grab the book, You're Not Too Late, Trusting God's Timing in a Hurry Up World, wherever you like to buy books, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Christian Book, all the places.
Amazing. And listeners, I will put those links in the show notes so that it's easy for you to buy that book and to follow Rebecca on Instagram. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me. I love what you're doing, and I'm excited for more testimonies to come from all of your writing.
Thanks, Kathryn.
All right, listeners, I will talk to you next week. Bye. Thanks for listening to Heart and Soul. If this episode encouraged you in any way, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Talk to you next week.